Why am I usually happier than everyone else? I'm going to talk about it because there's decisions that you can make to be super happy. And they're most of the time, no, actually all of the time, they're just decisions. You're making decisions. And let's start with self-love. I explained this already once. Is self-love is actually equals actions of higher harmony. So you close your eyes and you're like, what would I love to do right now? What would I love to feel right now? And then you just allow yourself to do that. And that's already puts you in a higher state of harmony and a higher state of happiness. It just automatically happens. So that's one thing. I don't do things which are not higher state of harmony. And the second thing is I follow my heart intuition. For example, I was at a car garage. They wanted to make a copy of my key for the car. I wanted a second key. And I waited in the garage for 5 hours, and it was never clear when it's finished, so I couldn't just go away and then come back later. The weather was also really bad. And I met some other people during that time that were waiting for their car, so that was interesting. And I was just hyper aware of present moment and just letting things flow. And if nothing happened, I would just stare out of the window, whatever. And it turns out that they were waiting for a call from Fiat. And the next day, those are very important examples because you will see that it makes all sense in the end why I'm happier than other people. So, most of the time. Not all of the time, but most of the time. The second day, they wanted me to do the same thing again. And I decided I don't even want to go there. And then the guy calls, which surprised me because I thought there's no like fixed appointments. And he's like, "Where are you?" I'm like, I have other plans for today. So because of that day I went to the sauna. And so I drove over there and there's like, "Hey, okay, let's try to do this in 1 hour. If it doesn't work, we'll do it some other time." And it was again taking a little bit longer. I met another dude, which was super, super important, by the way, the other dude. Anyway, everything works together like if you live like me, everything comes together like a massive, crazy alignment of synchronicities. Super interesting. So the other guy I met, actually, we were talking about the gym, like fitness, and I haven't been to a gym like for 15 years. And then I said, "Hey, actually, it's a good idea. I could go to the gym today." So if I hadn't met him, I wouldn't even have had the idea. So it's interesting how everything is interwoven. And the problem is the moment you get upset and are not in the flow, you are blocking yourself from all of these informations. Actually, this could be a huge video here because there's so many other things that come into it. The spiritual awakening is super important because otherwise you get stuck in your head, and I just flow with whatever is. I'm very analytical, but only when I wonder about things, not during my daily life. I don't go like, should I do this? Should I not do this? And think about it from all sides. I go more like with the flow of my heart intuition, what feels right in that perspective. And then after I went to the gym, although the gym was packed and full of people, which I usually don't like as an HSP, it was I felt so good going there. It was so good to go there, and I was so happy, and I decided I will go there at least twice a week. And I feel very excited and motivated about it. And yeah, and then I don't stack things on top of each other. I really avoid that. So when I was I was invited to go to a restaurant with two Estonian guys, and I was like, yeah, it would be nice. I would really like to go, but at the same time, he gave a time which was too soon, which should have been like an hour later or 2 hours later, and that was problematic for me because I was already in a organic store, and I decided to then not go there because it would stack on top of each other and then it would create stress. So I even though I miss certain things, I purposefully decide to not stack these things over each other. It was interesting because the guy wasn't even like, that was super strange. Like, and I'm very careful about these type of people, and understanding toxic meta framing is a key part of being happy. Also, there's one thing which sometimes I don't understand. So he said, so maybe we were speaking like at 5:30 p.m. something like that, that we would go to dinner, and then I said at 6:30 I'm in the organic food shop, and then he says, then a little bit later he says, well, we were meeting at 7, and it was already 6:50 or something, and I said, well, I can't make it, do some other time, I guess, or how long are you going to stay there, and so forth. And I didn't receive a response. And not receiving a response on when you actually plan something is a type of toxic metaframe. Now, I told you 80% to 90% of people are toxic metaframing. It's a soft toxic metaframe, but it's a toxic metaframe. And the problem is that when people continuously do this, in this case, I could forgive 1 or 2 times, but if you don't recognize it as such, depending on how it goes from there, then you are gonna spend time with people who possibly, I'm not saying always, who make life more miserable than better. Yeah, but it depends. Like, it's hard to say. Right now, you have to know the person a little bit better. I mean, unless it's a hard toxic metaframe, like, and so that I avoid toxic people by understanding toxic metaframing, and that puts me also in a better mood. But then you also have to lose the fears of being alone, of being for a while in your own space. And what I like to do is, if it's possible, if you're in nature or in hermit, like, it doesn't work, but if you're in the city, you can do that. I like to flow between the people and feel who gives me the best vibe, and I concentrate on those. And everything who's toxic metaframing, I avoid. And the faster you can avoid them, the better. And the problem is, if you only have few people that you come in contact with, you tend to concentrate on those because you have social needs. But if you flow between many, you can pick the healthy ones. And I think over time, you also learn to like sense in the room already who's like the non-toxic one, you could say. And it has to do with spiritual awakening, realizing, for example, that 10 people in the room, they're all kind of, you could say, bad energy or something, and you just are okay with not getting to know anyone and just wait until a better person comes along. So that's an essential part, because otherwise, because our mood is also very much determined about our social interactions. And so, not stack things over each other, spiritual awakening, not being in the past or in the future. When I'm in the future, I'm usually just optimistic about what I'm gonna do. I don't think much about the past. And I've learned to let go of people quicker. This is a really, really good like tool is because you might have 1 year great experience with this person and suddenly they turn into an asshole. I had this with one of my friends. He was like, for several years we were like good buddies, and then suddenly he became a real asshole. Something changed in his energy, and I said, hey, listen, you toxic metaframe this woman, I don't like the way you did that. And then he was pissy about me, and then I was like, yeah, let's just part our ways. And it turns out actually that he responded very immaturely on this parting ways, and until now it feels completely correct. So anytime you empty a drawer, it will get filled by something else. So if you make space, something else will come in it, and nothing there's no obligation to people, unless they're your children. You don't have an obligation to people, and especially if they make your life miserable. Otherwise, there's no, if they give you higher harmony in your life, energetically they give you higher harmony, then you can keep them in your life. If they reduce your harmony, you don't need to keep them in your life. So that's how I do it. And of course, letting go of fear through spiritual awakening, sitting in vipassana, these type of things, that was a major shift. I think that's a major thing about happiness, because you allow yourself to do decisions automatically that give you lots of joy and so forth. That, where, for example, if you lose your fears, you'll probably change your lifestyle from not so happy to much happier, just because you allow yourself to do what you want to do. And then the thing about libido empowerment is, so I have this guy I'm friends with. He said from the mind he doesn't allow himself to look at a girl's ass because it's kind of like objectifying her and so forth. But he's controlling that with his brain. So he's like saying no. So it's religious or spiritual or whatever is the reason, but it's a dogmatic in a way. And I do the exact opposite. If I really feel like I want to do it and it's the right time, I just look at it and be like, whoa. Inside, I'll just love this energy. So I'm allowing myself this energy. And that's also a major thing, because most people are libido suppressed, and so they don't allow themselves to feel this energy, to experience this energy within themselves. So it's also a major part of it. And yeah, so actually you could almost say that through the spiritual awakening, my energetic expression becomes more unhinged. It's more free for expression, rather than through the mind trying to say, oh, this is okay, this is not okay, and doing things the way we were taught. But then, of course, I'm very calibrated because I'm empathetic. I think about how others feel when I do certain things, so I only do it if I know that I won't hurt anybody's feelings with that or something like that, or when they don't see it, kind of like that. Yeah, but I really have like most days, if my body is fine, I have like a 9 out of 10. Like, and going to the gym was also major change as well. So now I can feel that with the endorphins, with a lot of things. It's really a good idea to keep your body at optimal level, but it's not 100% necessary for happiness. But it's also a major part, of course. Yeah. So if I would put some some bullet points down, it would be spiritual awakening with Muji. I would put that always on number one for anything. The second thing is not stacking things on top of each other. The third is avoiding toxic people, recognizing quickly through toxic metaframing understanding. Then the next one would be, yeah, I said not stacking things on top of each other. Then the next one would be allowing myself higher harmony in everything, being able to let go quicker of people, losing fears. Losing fears is a big one. Getting out of situations which are not ideal, to get out of them as quickly as possible. So if things start to stack, like some people are making noise or just not my vibe, I leave as soon as possible. Feeling into the heart intuition what I want to do next. And yeah. The thing, there's a lot of people, when we talk about money, there's an interesting thing, because you don't need that much money to have this kind of lifestyle. You can, but you don't need to. And actually, even if you have a lot, you probably won't even need that, because you can just do the same thing with less. So let's say if you for example, if you made 2,000 in we're talking about Europe, if you had 2,000 netto in euros per month, you can already have the same freedom and lifestyle completely. If you have millions, you come into the same situation, because you can already have the same lifestyle for 2,000. So you don't need the millions. So all you have to do is figure out how to, let's say, have 1,500, 2,000 netto per month in order to have the same lifestyle. So I say this because happiness, if you have absolutely zero money, you need to be like almost enlightened to have the same happiness. But for example, you can't just decide to go to the gym because they want money. You can't just decide to buy organic food because they want money. You can't just decide, oh, I'm gonna buy myself something new to wear. You can't do that. So, and I would say it's about 50-50, that 50% of happiness you don't need money, 50% you do. You can, like I say, if you're enlightened, you don't need anything, but it's still going to be tough on the physical body. Like, you're going to be exposed to cold, you're going to be exposed to, cannot even pay for gas, for your or insurance or whatever, so internet access. And you know why I wanted to make this video? Because many, many, many people are actually lying about their state of happiness. They're saying online that they're happy, but they're not truly happy. A lot of them are in depression, or, for example, Mr. Beast, who's one of the biggest YouTubers in the world. He has like 400, 500, 600 million subscribers. I don't remember. He was asked if he's happy, and he said no. And you have many, many, many people like that. A lot of people that are like that. And it doesn't matter if they're successful or not. There's so many unhappy people. And I would say that most of the time I'm genuinely happy. And this is why I felt I needed to make this video. The only thing where I would say, but this is something that's going to happen, I can feel that. The only thing where I would say I'm not happy is I have a tough time with girls, in the sense, like, they love being in touch with me, like in terms of like exchanging numbers, they respond to me and stuff like that, but they're never interested. So the moment I would like, hey, do you want to go on a date? It would be like basically flaking out. And it's always the same thing. But it's also a modern phenomenon. It's not just me. Like, if I were to go in certain cultures, this probably wouldn't exist. So it's just where I am, basically. And And sometimes also, if you come from genuine interest, it's oftentimes not even worth it anymore, because the girls they can't sense genuine interest. They'll put you in the same category as any other man. So whether it's genuine interest or not, the response is the same. And so doesn't make much sense anymore to ask someone to go out or something. Which is kind of sad, but that's the way it is. And I guess I'm originally from Prague. If I were to be there, it would be different. But so I always say I have sometimes like a 9 out of 10, 9.5 out of 10 happiness day. And the only way to top that would be if I had a little bit more success with girls. But it's not 100%. Like, yeah. But I do have the option. I know I have the option, and it's probably just a question of time when I will be like, okay, now I'll go to the Philippines, or I go to South America or something like that, and feel like. But then sometimes it's a cultural shock. I give you an example because many women don't know this because they're not in the same situation, and most women don't experience this, so it's very easy for them to judge it without understanding it. I was raised. Although I'm Czech, I went to school in at least part of my childhood in Germany, in South Germany, and my experience there was that the women are kind of harsh and cold in a way, and that they're generally not interested in what you do. I think it's what it is. It's kind of like it's an oversaturation at some point, like a cultural oversaturation. And then my cousin was like, hey, come to Prague. And I went over there, and he met some girls in the center that he knows. And so we were sitting all down, and they were talking, and I was listening, and I didn't say anything because my experience was in South Germany was anytime you open your mouth and speak about spirituality or anything, they would be like, okay, boring, bye. Kind of like this. And so I didn't say anything. And at one point, they like asked me something. Where are you from? What do you do? And I was super hesitant. But at some point, I said, this is what I do. And I'm a very authentic an integer. I don't lie about these things. So, but I was hesitant and they were like, "Oh, really? That's so interesting." And the energy shifted. And I had like an internal culture shock. I was like, holy. I was like, it's like completely different. And it took me a while to open up because I was like, I think they're faking it. Like, but they weren't. They were truly interested. And so that's why I'm saying it's a cultural thing. And now for women, it's super easy to judge because they're in a power position. Women right now are in a power position, definitely in society. And the worst is if they're still complaining that they're not in a power position and there's like patriarchy and so forth. I'm like, Jesus. No, they're definitely in a power position because they are deciding, basically. They're deciding who they want to meet, how many they want to meet, in what venue they want to meet. They can do all of that with tremendous leverage. Talking dating apps and all of this stuff, and men are falling into the opposite. And instead of women being compassionate about it, they're being actually assless about it a lot of times. They're even insulting men, talking bad about them, but they're the ones who make the decisions. So it's a bit narcissistic. It's weird, and yeah. So basically, a lot of men, not all men, are in the position where it's hard to experience that energy exchange on a healthy, open level, conscious level, and and that makes the 0.5 or 1, in the scale of happiness, that makes it's missing a little bit. There are men where it's not missing because they're generally like attractive guys, tall, and just exude that kind of where women want to hang around. But that happens when you're 14, 15. So when you're 14, 15 and you're already good looking, you're collecting that experience, and then it becomes a positive feedback loop. And depending where you were raised, like in my case in South Germany, you don't have that that experience, that positive feedback loop. And that's something very hard to change later on. That's also why I advise a lot of young people to travel around a lot, because to recognize in the bubble that they were living in, but not like the 1-2 day, 1 week travels or 2 weeks. You really have to stay a month at a certain place to realize like the cultural differences and learn a little bit the language and so forth. And then you see how small the bubble was in which you were living. And that allows you to also better distinguish about what truly vibes with you and what doesn't. And I think, there's something super interesting being a man and having a lot of joy come from interaction with women. I noticed something like when I speak to one woman and I kind of get hooked on her, where it's like, oh, she's interesting, but she's not responding to me the way I would prefer her to respond to me, and I keep that in my mind. It creates kind of like this feeling of tension maybe, and then but when I meet someone else, the one before who didn't treat me the way or didn't respond the way I wanted to be responded to, falls away completely. So what I learned becoming older is that if I don't receive the response that feels to me like an open, nice, natural, healthy response, I just go immediately to someone else, and I completely forget about the other one. So, but this is for a lot of men, it's very hard to do because they are either introvert or they don't allow themselves to get to know someone new. Or I'm not talking about relationships, I'm talking just superficially. Like, let's say you come into some place and you speak to someone and you're really interested in them, you exchange numbers, contacts, and you're like, you want to go on a date with them, but you see that their response is very like dry. It's like there's nothing more there, and you're wondering about how do you need to like manage this somehow so it changes, and you kind of get fixed on that, and like, I really like this girl, why is it like that, kind of like this. And then when I then speak immediately to someone else, I completely forget the other one, and I use this knowledge about myself to not stay in a situation where I feel like in a bad vibe, in a bad harmony. So let's say, for example, okay, give you an example. It's like the woman was super happy about getting in touch, and then you're like, hey, let's go out, and she's like reading it but ignoring it, the message. Okay, you don't know when she's gonna respond, and maybe she'll respond like 4 days later and be like, whatever, flakes out or whatever. And then you can be either the person who like overinvests, or you can be like, okay, let's find as quickly as possible someone else to talk to. And actually that's a skill. That's a skill to be like, okay, close the phone, go in the city, speak to someone on the street. And you will see, you do that 2 or 3 times, you forget about the other one, at least for me. So that's a tool that I also use for my libido empowerment happiness, that I don't focus on things which give me disharmony, And like I said, 90% of people are toxic, whether you think she's a good person or not, or he is a good person. There's a high probability they're actually toxic in some form or way to your harmony system, to your energy system. So I make a purposeful decision to immediately switch that. And now, a lot of the things I say might be for some people kind of like edgy in a way, like because they will have very strict ideas about how life should work. And this is interesting, but the question you have to ask yourself, are you happy or not? Are you truly happy or not? I can generally say that most of the days I have 9 out of 10. So so don't come to me judging me for my decisions, because it's like, why would I change something if I'm happy and I'm not causing harm to anyone else? And I noticed there's like, and this is something that's so bizarre for me, is there's so many people who get massive attention, but they're generally unhappy. And that's something so bizarre if you think about it. You have literally people that are deeply unhappy but get massive amounts of attention, and nobody's sensing that they're actually unhappy because they're so good at hiding it. So the question really becomes, what is genuine, what is not genuine? So it's a very, very interesting thing. It's a fallacy. It's basically like a huge lie, like a massive lie that is out there. And most of the time when to me, people tell me a lot of stuff, and you wouldn't believe the amount of people who have health problems, literally. But then you look at what they're buying, what they're drinking, what they're smoking, what all of this stuff, and there's so many people who have no competence, who make one bad decision after the other, and cannot get out of those situations for whatever reason. There's millions of reasons. But it's all decisions. And you just have to make the right decisions. And that's why I'm making the video. Just make the right decisions. And you start with self-love, highest harmony, not stacking things over each other, understanding toxic matter framing, and all of these things that I talked about. Like, it's just a bunch of decisions that when you make it a routine, you completely change your life. And some things are very hard to change. Like, for example, if you have basic root chakra fear, maybe also from ancestry or something, or from trauma from childhood, those things are very, very difficult to change unless you do maybe ayahuasca and other types of, hardcore, sessions, maybe very deep breath work and so forth. But even though you might have these fears, you can make these other decisions which will slowly start to help you overall. By the way, if you were to heal all of those issues, like let's say the root chakra, right? You were to heal all of these issues. If you don't make the decisions like I said you should do, you will still not be happy. Because society and everything around you is so problematic, so toxic, that it will constantly pull you down. So you have to... I have this exactly figured out. It's like I learned all of these things very, very clearly. And I have to say, like, you have to have the liberty to express yourself the way you want to. I met this guy. Actually, I'm going to give two examples because this is super important. I met a hippie couple that was already 20 years living in Spain or longer. They left Germany a long time ago. They were a German couple, hippie couple living in Spain in the mountains. Super hermit, kind of like not talking to anyone. And you would say they do this because they want to keep away from society and so forth. You know what they did every day? They were every day on the German news and complaining about what was going on there. They were definitely not happy. And and then I met someone else who was doing something similar. I forgot it right now, but if it comes again, I'll tell you. But it's like if you don't have a spiritual awakening. Oh yeah, and the problem is she wasn't like that, but he thought himself super spiritual, but he had no spiritual awakening. But he was very dogmatic about certain things, like nah. So you would say something to him, and he'd be like, nah, it's like this. Yeah, and I knew that it's not like that, but I just, I was just listening and just ignoring it. And what was super interesting is that because everything was so tight, so compact in thinking and energy, they weren't even living for those 20 years. They were just surviving and still feeding themselves with this bullshit information. And the other person was similar. I forgot what it was about. It was like, so unless you completely unhook from all of this, you are going to be still in this mentally in this toxic environment that you actually wanted to escape from. Yeah, you need to release first the spiritual awakening is the most important. You must release yourself from this thought carousel.